This is your favorite time of the week with your number one podcast.
Hear my true story.
Well, my dear listeners, welcome to Hear My True Story podcast. It is me, your host, Otako, and I'm happy to have you again this wonderful week. I'm sure my dear listeners have been wondering where have I been for all this time. Well, my dear listeners, it was such a tight schedule for me and I couldn't do the weekly podcasting episodes, and I was really caught up in that, and I couldn't also schedule what people really like to hear previously from our previous episodes. Anyway, right now I'm here to share with you a wonderful and another interesting story. So my dear listeners, what is interesting about this is that in the previous month and previous weeks, Germany has been preparing for elections, and as they were preparing for elections, a lot of topics came up that really interested me as a person, and I was like, well, why not think about them once or twice or 3 or 4, 5 times a day. Anyway, today I want to tell you something interesting, and that is being an immigrant in Germany. Well, what makes people to decide to become immigrants? Well, being an immigrant can be decided as an individual, or maybe it could be a decision that a person takes because of the circumstances. That is the point. So anyway, for me as Otako, on this Hear My True Story podcast, I currently, or maybe now as you listen to this episode, I live in Germany. Yes, it's because I took a decision personally as a person and decided to move to Germany. Well, that is what made me to be one of the person here who's living in Germany and that can share an experience of being an immigrant in Germany. So, with immigration, it comes with a lot of challenges, learning and accepting and respecting the new cultures that you have met in that new home in the foreign country that you decided to move to. So, one of the hardest things that at least I have decided as an immigrant to learn is that to respect. Respect is not just something you give as an immigrant, but respect, it is something you must constantly as an immigrant prove. So one morning here in Germany, I woke up to the news of an horrific attack in Germany. A driver had deliberately driven into a crowd, injuring and killing a lot of people. You know what? That was a tragedy. It is not something that someone wishes to see. My first reaction when I read that news was, I'm so sorry. I don't know. This is so sad. But then, on the second thought, something came into my mind. It was a prayer. Oh God, I pray that the person who has committed this crime should not be an immigrant. Please, God, I pray that the person who has done this terrible crime should not be an immigrant. Please, don't let it be someone like me. I mean, why did I even pray like this? Because I knew what would follow. It was election season and the public was already hostile towards immigrants. So, if the person who committed the crime was an immigrant, it wouldn't just be an individual crime. It would be used as an argument against all immigrants. Therefore, we all immigrants would be blamed for it. So I waited for the police report. And then the police report confirmed the suspect was an immigrant. So the backlash was immediate. The public became even more louder. People were saying immigrants are criminals. They don't integrate in the society. They don't respect our cultures. They should go back to where they came from. That was the argument that was online, was on TVs, you could hear on radios, everyone saying we don't want the immigrants here. They are really not integrating. They are criminals. They commit crimes. They don't respect our cultures. This is what I was praying for. Let it not be an immigrant, because as an immigrant, I'm already put into one circle of being an immigrant at the same time who doesn't respect the culture, or who doesn't respect other people's rights, or who commits crimes. And then, after elections, a similar crime happened again in the same year. Another driver deliberately drove into a crowd. But this time, the suspect was a white German man. The narrative changed completely. The suspect was suffering from mental illness. That was the statement from the police. The suspect had no terrorist motivations. The suspect was mentally ill. No one called for all white German men to be held accountable. No one suggested deportation. It was treated as an isolated case, but not a reflection of one entire group. This was my breaking point. Why is a white criminal seen as an individual, but an immigrant criminal represents the entire community of immigrants? It was heartbreaking to see that the action of one immigrant could define all of us. Yet the same logic did not apply to the native population. So as an immigrant, we do not have the luxury of making mistakes if you live in Germany. Every action we take, every word we speak must be careful, measured, because the system is not built to respect or to protect us. Even something as simple as speaking German correctly becomes a point of security. Learning a new language takes time, 6 years, sometimes more, to really speak fluently. Yet mistakes, meanwhile, native speakers with poor grammar are not held to the same standard. It's so heartbreaking that one action of one immigrant defines what all other immigrants are. But anyway, putting that aside, I have learned to identify myself differently. So now, despite everything that is happening about immigrants and if they are integrated or not integrated, for me, I define myself as someone who's integrated well in the system. I have found my own way to measure integration. Forget about these official documents that you have C1, C2, B1. No. If you can confidently eat German bread, you are integrated. When I first arrived here in Germany, I was overwhelmed by the number of bread options. Back home in my home country, bread was simple. White toast bread, white toast bread, maybe a few variations. But in Germany, there are a lot of breads. Banana bread, Roggenbrot, Vollkornbrot, Dinkelbrot, all kinds of breads. There are so many. I remember myself in 2019, I stood in front of a bakery, completely lost. I could not decide what kind of bread I want to eat. So I walked away without bread. Fast forward to today, I can now navigate the bread system. I know what kind of bread I want to eat. I'm now a pro in deciding what kind of bread to buy for myself. Actually, I can even enjoy Abendbrot, evening bread. It is a meal that once confused me actually. I used to wait for a real dinner, only to realize that the bread was the dinner. So this culture shift has become even more amusing when a friend of mine visited me from Uganda. I was so excited to host my friend actually. Before even they arrived in Germany, I asked them, what kind of food do you want to eat in your time when you visit me? What kind of breakfast do you want to have? And they told me they eat everything. So I was excited to show my friend my German lifestyle. I prepared for my friend ultimate breakfast, spread fresh bakery bread. I bought various cheese. I bought meat to put on the bread. I bought vegetable creams to put on the bread. I made sure that it looks beautiful. But when he saw the table, he was horrified. He asked me, Otako? I was like, yes. Is this the breakfast we are going to have? Is there something else I can eat? For him, German bread was the worst thing you could serve for breakfast. But for me, Otako, mastering the art of eating bread meant I had truly integrated in the German system and the German culture. So, this is what I can tell you, my dear friends. Those who are immigrants, those who are migrants, being an immigrant in Germany is not just about surviving. This is what I can tell you. It is about constantly proving your worth. One mistake can define an entire community. But small victories like mine, ordering bread in the bakery with confidence, reminds you the journey of integration. So, if you are new in Germany, take my advice, my dear listeners. Learn the language, respect the culture, and most importantly, learn to love to eat bread. And as for soup, there's what is called Eintopf. That is a soup. For another time, I'll tell you about that soup another day. However, my dear listeners, thank you so much for listening to this wonderful story from me, myself, Otako, the host of Hear My True Story podcast. And thank you for those who are watching the YouTube channel, Hear My True Story podcast. And before I leave, I want to tell you, my dear listeners, Hear My True Story podcast, we are part of an event that is being organized in Marburg in Germany for the public to share their personal stories on an open stage. So anyway, for those who live in Marburg, well, you are welcome to watch our night in the month of March 2025. It will be the 22nd of March 2025. Anyway, let me leave you this mention of the event.
Hast du dich schon mal nicht respektiert gefühlt, wegen deiner Identität, deines Aussehens oder einfach wer du bist? Dann komm zur Diverse Open Stage am 22. März im interkulturellen Begegnungszentrum Kerner in Marburg, Lutherischer Kirchhof 3, 18:30 Uhr. Teile deine Geschichte, hör zu, lass uns zusammen wachsen. Respekt beginnt mit Zuhören. Wir sehen uns dort.
We not only have voices for a podcast, but also faces for YouTube. Don't miss your next episode. Hear my true story.